the power of mercy and forgiveness. But be kind to one another, merciful, forgiving one another, even as God also forgave you in Christ. Ephesians 4:32. The pain caused by betrayal and emotional suffering is an invisible but deeply real wound. It settles in the heart, often without warning, and erodes the inner peace, the impact of pain. It can lead to loneliness, distrust, and isolation. When we are hurt by someone we trusted, we question our own worth and even the goodness of the world around us. This pain is not limited to the moment of the offense. It echoes in the thoughts, reliving the feeling of abandonment and sadness repeatedly. Holding resentment is like holding a burning ember and hoping it will burn the other. But we are the ones who get burned. Rancor not only affects the mind, but also the body. It manifests itself in insomnia, anxiety, physical pain, and even chronic diseases. A heavy heart prevents the flowering of joy and hope. Living stuck in the past is like trying to walk with chains on your feet. Each step becomes a greater burden. I remember the story of a man who was betrayed by a very close friend. The disappointment was so deep that he carried this burden for years, avoiding any contact or remembrance of the traitor. However, what hurt most was not the act itself, but the inability to free oneself from that hurt. He realized that while the other went on with his life, he remained a prisoner of the past. The process of forgiveness does not begin with a feeling of peace, but with the decision not to let pain define who we are. Forgiveness does not deny the reality of the offense. He acknowledges the wound, but refuses to allow it to control the future. The wounded heart seeks justice, but the soul thirsting for peace cries out for freedom. And that freedom is born when we choose to let go. What hurts us? Pain teaches us, but it can also blind us when we are hurt. It's easy to believe that holding on to anger gives us control. However, this anger turns into an emotional prison. True power lies in freeing oneself from the weight of hate and allowing love and compassion to fill that empty space. Forgiveness is an act of courage, not weakness. Resentment builds walls, while forgiveness builds bridges. Maintaining bitterness is erecting barriers that separate us not only from the person who hurt us, but from other relationships that could flourish the resentful heart. You see the world through the lens of distrust and fear. The heart that forgives finds beauty even in the midst of scars. There is a tale about a woman who, after years of resentment against her family, realized that the pain she felt was caused not just by what they did to her, but by everything she refused to let go of. When she finally decided to forgive, not because they deserved it, but because she deserved peace, her life changed. Forgiveness has not changed the past, but it transformed the present. We often think that forgiveness is justifying the other, but in reality, it is justifying ourselves, choosing not to be defined by pain. Forgiveness does not erase the memory, but redefines the meaning of the memory. What was once a sign of weakness becomes a milestone of overcoming. When we understand that forgiveness is a gift to ourselves, the perspective changes. It's not about forgetting or minimizing the pain, but not to let it dictate who we are. Forgiveness is the key that opens the door to the emotional prison where we often lock ourselves. Forgiveness is a journey of self-knowledge and healing. It reveals our ability to love, even when we have been hurt. It is a testimony to the strength that dwells within us, a force that does not depend on what the other has done, but on the decision we make to be free. Forgiveness is a balm for the wounded soul, a medicine that heals from the inside out. When we decide to forgive, we are not only freeing the other, but especially ourselves. Forgiveness is like opening a window in a dark room, allowing light to come in and dispel the shadows of resentment. It brings peace, clarity, and a new outlook on life. The heart relieved of grief finds room for gratitude. Hope and love flourish again. Many believe that forgiveness is the same as approving of the mistake or forgetting the wrong that was done. But forgiveness does not mean that what happened was right. On the contrary, it is recognizing that there was a wound, but choosing not to let that wound define who we are. Forgiveness is an act of strength and wisdom, a decision not to carry the burden of the past. It's not about the other deserving of forgiveness, but about us deserving peace. When we hold a grudge, it is as if we keep an invisible chain connected to the person who hurt us. It binds us to the past, preventing us from moving forward. Forgiveness breaks this chain, freeing us to live fully. It doesn't change what happened, but it changes the way we deal with pain. Forgiveness is a gift we give to ourselves, an act of self-love. Emotional and mental health flourishes when we learn to forgive. The weight of chronic grief can manifest itself in stress, anxiety, and even physical illness. Forgiveness brings relief by reducing the negative emotional burden we carry. It's like dropping a heavy backpack after a long hike. The body and mind thank you. Forgiveness does not erase the past, but illuminates the present. A woman I knew, after years of resentment for a betrayal, decided to forgive, not because the other deserved it, but because she could no longer bear to live imprisoned in pain. She found that forgiveness did not change the past, but transformed the way she saw herself. She was no longer a victim of pain, but someone who chose emotional freedom. Forgiveness gave her control over her own history. Forgiveness is an inner process. We do not need the acceptance or repentance of the other to forgive. True forgiveness is born in our hearts, regardless of the actions of others. It is an act of personal liberation. Even if the other never acknowledges the mistake, forgiveness is still valid and powerful, for its main impact is within us. Many think that by forgiving, they are granting a favor to the other, but the greatest beneficiary of forgiveness is ourselves. It is not a weakness, but a demonstration of emotional maturity. Forgiveness is affirming, I choose not to be controlled by pain. It is a gesture of courage and a step towards inner peace. Forgiveness also teaches us compassion. When we look at each other with eyes of empathy, we realize that we are all imperfect, susceptible to mistakes. This does not justify wrong actions, but it helps us understand that suffering is part of the human experience. Forgiveness is recognizing our own vulnerability and yet choosing love over hate. To live without forgiveness is to carry a burden we were not made to bear. The human heart was not created to accumulate sorrows. He was made to love, grow, and flourish in forgiveness. It is the fertilizer that allows the wounded soul to heal and to bear new fruit. It is a gift we give ourselves to live with lightness and hope. Forgiveness is a daily choice. It is not a feeling that comes out of nowhere, but a conscious decision to let go of what holds us back. Sometimes we have to remember to forgive again and again until the heart is truly at peace, and that's okay. The important thing is to take the first step towards freedom. Forgiveness is not an isolated event, an end in a story of pain. It is an ongoing process, a journey that requires time, patience, and effort. We often believe that forgiveness means simply saying, I forgive you, and suddenly everything is resolved. But the heart doesn't work that way. Forgiveness is like a seed planted in arid soil. It needs to be watered, cared for, and cultivated until it blooms. This journey can be full of ups and downs. On some days, the burden of grief seems lighter. In others, the memories come back strongly, reigniting the pain, and this is normal. Forgiveness is not linear. It does not follow a rigid schedule. It is a healing process, and like any wound, it takes time to heal completely. The important thing is to keep walking, even if slowly. There are several strategies that can help us on this journey. Writing in a journal is a powerful way to express repressed feelings and organize confused thoughts. Putting pain on paper can be a first step to understanding it and gradually freeing yourself from it. Writing transforms the invisible, which allows us to better deal with what we feel. Another valuable practice is meditation and prayer. Moments of silence and reflection help calm the mind and heart. By connecting with what is deepest within us, we find forces we didn't even know existed. Meditation teaches us to observe our feelings without judging them, allowing the pain to flow and gradually dissipate. Talking to a therapist or a trusted counselor is also an effective tool. Talk about pain in a safe environment. It can help us process difficult emotions. The support of someone who listens without judgment is an immense relief. We don't have to carry the weight alone. Seeking help is an act of courage, not weakness. Inspiring stories of forgiveness show us that it is possible to find peace even after deep trauma. I remember the story of a man who lost his family in an act of violence, but years later decided to forgive the person responsible. He said, "I forgave him not because he deserved it, but because I deserved to live in peace." This testimony shows us that forgiveness is a gift we give to ourselves. Inspirational quotes can also guide us in this process. One that strongly echoes is forgiveness. It's freeing a prisoner and discovering that the prisoner was you. This quote reminds us that forgiveness is not a favor to another, but an act of personal liberation in forgiving. Let go of the chains that keep us bound to the past. Forgiveness also involves accepting that pain was part of our history, but it doesn't have to define who we are. It doesn't erase what happened, but it gives us the chance to rewrite the meaning of what we live. The past cannot be changed, but the impact it has on us can be transformed. Forgiveness is this transformation into action in some cases. Forgiveness can be a lonely process, especially when the other person does not acknowledge the mistake. But even then, the act of forgiving remains valid and necessary. Forgiveness does not depend on the repentance of others. It is born within us, and every small step on this journey is a step towards emotional freedom. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves every day, not a destination to be reached, but a path to be traveled with kindness and patience. In every step, even the most difficult, we find a new opportunity for healing and growth. The important thing is not to give up, because forgiveness is not about forgetting, but about choosing to live in peace. Forgiveness is not an isolated event, an end in a story of pain. It is an ongoing process, a journey that requires time, patience, and effort. Often we believe that forgiveness means simply saying, "I forgive you," and suddenly everything is resolved. But the heart doesn't work that way. Forgiveness is like a seed planted in arid soil. It needs to be watered, cared for, and cultivated until it blooms. This journey can be full of ups and downs. On some days, the burden of grief appears lighter. In others, the memories come back strongly, rekindling the pain, and that's normal. Forgiveness is not linear. It does not follow a rigid schedule. It is a healing process, and like any wound, it takes time to heal completely. The important thing is to keep walking, even if slowly. There are several strategies that can help us on this journey. Writing in a journal is a powerful way to express repressed feelings and organize confused thoughts. Putting the pain on paper can be a first step to understanding it and gradually releasing it. If from her, writing transforms the invisible, which allows us to better deal with what we feel. Another valuable practice is meditation and prayer. Moments of silence and reflection help calm the mind and heart. By connecting with what is deepest within us, we find forces we didn't even know existed. Meditation teaches us to observe our feelings without judging them, allowing the pain to flow and gradually dissipate. Talking to a therapist or a trusted counselor is also an effective tool. Talking about pain in a safe environment can help us process difficult emotions. The support of someone who listens without judgment is an immense relief. We don't have to carry the weight alone. Seeking help is an act of courage, not weakness. Inspiring stories of forgiveness show us that it is possible to find peace even after deep trauma. I remember the story of a man who lost his family in an act of violence, but years later decided to forgive the person responsible. He said, "I forgave him not because he deserved it, but because I deserved to live in peace." This testimony shows us that forgiveness is a gift we give to ourselves. Inspirational quotes can also guide us in this process. One that resonates strongly is forgiveness. It's freeing a prisoner and finding out that the prisoner was you. This quote reminds us that forgiveness is not a favor to another, but an act of personal liberation. By forgiving, we let go of the chains that keep us bound to the past. Forgiveness also involves accepting that pain was part of our history, but it doesn't have to define who we are. It doesn't erase what happened, but it gives us the chance to rewrite the meaning of what we live. The past cannot be changed, but the impact it has on us can be transformed. Forgiveness is this transformation into action. In some cases, forgiveness can be a lonely process, especially when the other person does not acknowledge the mistake. But even so, the act of forgiveness remains valid and necessary. Forgiveness does not depend on the repentance of others. It is born within us, and every small step on this journey is a step towards emotional freedom. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves every day. It is not a destination to be reached, but a path to be traveled with kindness and patience. In every step, even the most difficult, we find a new opportunity for healing and growth. The important thing is not to give up. Because forgiveness is not about forgetting, but about choosing to live in peace. Forgiveness is not easy, and recognizing this is the first step to overcoming the barriers that prevent us from moving forward. Forgiveness often comes up against deep feelings of anger, fear, and a sense of injustice. The wounded heart cries out for reparation, for explanations that may never come. And that's where the challenge lies. To forgive even when there are no excuses, when the pain seems greater than our ability to love. Fear is one of the most common barriers. Fear of being hurt again, fear of looking weak, fear that by forgiving, we are allowing the other to repeat the mistake. But forgiveness is not about the other, it is about us. Forgiveness does not mean giving up healthy boundaries, on the contrary. It is an act of strength that frees us from the cycle of pain and allows us to live with more clarity and emotional protection. Another obstacle is pride. We often hold resentment because we believe that forgiveness is a sign of weakness. However, pride is a prison that keeps us chained to the past. True power lies in acknowledging our pain and yet choosing not to be defined by it. Forgiveness does not diminish our dignity, it strengthens it. The feeling of injustice also makes it difficult to forgive. We want the other to suffer as we suffer, to understand the depth of the pain they have caused, but the justice we seek does not always come the way we expect. Forgiveness in this case is not an attestation that all is well, but an act of letting go of control over what we cannot change. It allows us to find peace, even when earthly justice seems to fail. A practical way to deal with these barriers is to exercise empathy. Try to put yourself in the other person's shoes, not to justify the mistake, but to understand that we are all imperfect and fallible. This does not lessen the pain, but it broadens the understanding that just as we have been hurt, we may also, at some point, have hurt someone else. Empathy. It is a bridge that connects us to the humanity that exists in each of us. Writing about feelings is a powerful tool for working on forgiveness. By putting down what we feel on paper, we can view our pain more objectively and better understand what's keeping us from letting go of the past. Writing letters to the person who hurt us, even if they are never sent, can also be a therapeutic and liberating act. It is crucial to seek support from trusted individuals. Friends, family, or mental health professionals can provide diverse perspectives and assist us in processing pain. Isolation breeds resentment, while dialogue creates opportunities for healing. Sharing our experiences is a vital step towards finding inner peace. Practicing mindfulness aids us in focusing on the present without being overwhelmed by the past. When we are aware of the now, we can observe our feelings of anger or sadness without drowning in them. Mindfulness teaches us to acknowledge pain without judging it, allowing it to exist without controlling our actions. Stories of overcoming can inspire and motivate people who have faced deep trauma and yet have chosen to forgive. They show us that it is possible. Forgiveness does not erase what happened, but it turns pain into learning and growth. Every story of forgiveness is proof that the impossible can become possible. When the heart is willing, remember that forgiveness is not forgetting or accepting. What is unacceptable is to choose freedom over the prison of resentment. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves, not because the other person deserves it, but because we deserve it. Live in peace. Overcoming the barriers of forgiveness is an act of self-love, a courageous step towards healing and true inner freedom. Living a life of forgiveness is more than an isolated act. It is a daily choice, a lifestyle that frees us from the weight of the past and opens us to a future of peace and hope. Forgiveness is like a key that unlocks the invisible chains that keep our hearts bound to pain. When we decide to forgive continually, we create a space within ourselves. Where bitterness finds no place to grow, forgiveness frees us not only from the specific pain of an offense, but also from the repetitive cycle of resentment that can contaminate all areas of our lives. When we don't forgive, we carry the hurt into our relationships, work, and even into our moments of silence. Living a life of forgiveness is choosing each new day, not letting the past define our present. A life of forgiveness is marked by compassion. This does not mean being permissive of injustices, but developing a more human look at oneself and others. Compassion teaches us that we all make mistakes, and just as we want to be understood in our moments of failure, we can also extend that understanding to those who have hurt us. This does not lessen the pain, but it enlarges our ability to love, practice forgiveness daily. It's like strengthening an emotional muscle. At first it may seem difficult, but over time it becomes a natural part of our way of life. Forgiveness makes us lighter, more open to love, and less likely to be overwhelmed by negative feelings. It teaches us to respond to pain with maturity, not reactivity. One of the greatest blessings of living a life of forgiveness is experiencing healthier relationships. Forgiveness helps us resolve conflicts in a more constructive way without accumulating resentment. It allows us to see people beyond the mistakes they have made, recognizing that we are all more than our flaws. This creates deeper and truer connections. Inspire yourself in small daily gestures of forgiveness. Can be patience with someone impatient, understanding in the face of a harsh word, or the choice not to hold a grudge for a minor offense. These small acts build a resilient heart, capable of facing great challenges with a posture of peace and grace. A life of forgiveness is also a testimony to the world. In a time when hatred and rancor seem to dominate, living with a light heart and a willingness to forgive is a sign of hope. Forgiveness transforms not only the individual, it inspires entire communities. It shows that it is possible to live in a more humane and loving way, even in the midst of adversity. Forgiveness helps us find meaning in pain, not because pain is good, but because it can teach us valuable lessons about resilience, love, and growth. By choosing to forgive, we give new meaning to our scars. They cease to be marks of suffering and become symbols of overcoming and healing. Encourage you to practice forgiveness in your daily life. Start by identifying old resentments that still occupy space in your heart. Reflect on what you need to let go to live more lightly, and if you want, share your experience with others. Sharing your story can be an important step in the healing process. Forgiveness is not a final destination, but an ongoing journey. It doesn't mean we'll never feel pain again, but that even though we feel, we choose not to be defined by it. Forgiveness is a practice of love, love for ourselves, love for others, and love for the life we want to live. If you've come this far, it's because somehow the theme of forgiveness has touched your heart. Perhaps there is a hidden pain, a silent resentment, or even an internal battle between wanting to forgive and not knowing how. And it's all right. Forgiveness is not an easy road, but it is the most liberating path you can choose to take. Today, I want to make you an invitation. Free yourself, if not for the other, but for yourself. Release yourself from the weight you have been carrying for so long, from the invisible chains that limit the lightness of your soul. Forgiveness doesn't change what happened. It changes who you are. From that, it is a gift that only you can give yourself. If this message spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share with someone who needs to hear about the power of forgiveness. Maybe it's what someone else's heart has been waiting for a long time. And if you want, leave your comment here. Tell your experience, your difficulties, your victories. Your testimony can be the breath of hope that someone needs to take the first step. Forgiveness is an act of courage, of love. What about faith? You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just start with a simple decision, not to let the pain of the past define your future. Take the first step, even if small. The rest of the way you will discover with time. And remember, if you deserve to live in peace. If this message made sense to you, like, share, and subscribe to receive more heart-nourishing reflections. They strengthen the soul. Together we can build a community where love, compassion, and forgiveness are the foundations for a lighter and truer life. Will we walk this journey together? The first step starts now.